This finale's all payoff. That's the first thing. Not tension, not pressure, not even collision, okay? Payoff. That's it. And about halfway through, I had this really weird reaction where I stopped asking whether the moments were working and started really just asking something much more basic. Wait, what exactly is this payoff to exactly? Because the episode keeps arriving at scenes that are filmed like Culmination. The camera says Culmination. The score says Culmination. The performances say Culmination. But the story underneath, every one of those moments keeps coming up short. And that's when it hit me. This finale isn't just messy, it's a stress test. And it reveals that Starfleet Academy has been surviving all season on the appearance of dramatic weight, not the thing itself. What's up, my know-it-alls? All right. So, I came out of Rubicon knowing it didn't land. That part was easy. What took longer was figuring out why it didn't land. Because this isn't some cheap-looking disaster that I think ultimately would be a lot simpler. The show looks great. It's shot well. The scale is there. The production is doing its job. Honestly, maybe too much of its job. Because the more I sat with this episode, the more I realized the finale is constantly asking direction, score, blocking, performance, all of it to carry the weight the story was supposed to have already built before the scene was ever shot. And that's a nasty problem to have. Because once a finale starts asking departments to manufacture inevitability, I'm sorry, you're done. You really are. So here's where I landed. Rubicon reveals the real structural flaw of the entire season, okay? This show keeps jumping to the results. It wants the reconciliation, it wants the sacrifice beat, it wants the uprising image, it wants the Trek trial, it wants the moral gravity. And then it asks the scene to make that feel earned after the fact. That's backwards, I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. And once I started looking at the episode that way, everything got uglier. Because now I'm not asking, did this moment work? I'm asking, what scenes would have had to exist for this to work? And over, the answer is really the same. Those scenes aren't there. Let me start with the production. Because again, the production is not the issue. The show is gorgeous, all right? It really is. And you can argue with me if you want to, but the cinematic framing, it's got strong lighting, expensive looking environments, confident camera movement. You can tell there's real craft behind the lens here. But that craft is being asked to compensate. That's the thing. The direction keeps stepping in to create the feeling of narrative arrival. Push in here, swell the music there, give the actor the close-up, pause for significance, or as I've said throughout the rest of the season, let things sit. Which would be fine if the script had already done the heavy lifting. But a lot of the time, in fact, most of the time, it hasn't. So the scene is being shot like the audience has been brought somewhere the writing never fully took them. That's not just a writing issue. That's a production issue too. Because now every other department is being asked to fake culmination. And the finale is where that becomes impossible to miss. Take Sam and Genesis, because this is arguably one of those scenes I think where the episode practically tells on itself. It is begging to be accepted as a payoff. Genesis comes in, Sam is vulnerable, the air changes, the scene softens. It wants to play like sort of a meaningful emotional crossing, like two characters reaching a place they couldn't reach before. Fine. Then where's the road? No, seriously. I mean, think about that for a second. Where's it at? Where? I need someone to show me. I will absolutely wait. Where is the scene where Sam meaningfully rejects Genesis in a way that creates actual separation? Where is the escalation scene where that divide gets worse? Where's the scene where the disagreement actually costs them something? Where is the moment where one of them makes the other harder to like? Where's the friction? Because without those steps, without those elements, this is just not reconciliation. It's access. And that's uglier. Let's be real. The show's not writing collision here. It's writing access. What's the difference? Okay, one character is emotionally available, the other character steps in with exactly the right line, exactly the right softness, exactly the right emotional key, and suddenly we're supposed to feel like something has been crossed. But nothing was crossed. Nothing resisted. Nothing held. And that's really why the scene feels embarrassing once you stop and look at it. Not because the actors are bad. They're not. Because the scene wants the dignity of earned healing without enduring the mess that healing and drama actually requires. And once that clicked, a bunch of the episodes snapped into focus for me. Because the show has a writing mode. All right, it doesn't like leaving characters difficult to each other for very long. All right, it does not like unresolved pressure. It doesn't really trust collision. So what it writes instead is access. A character hurts, another character understands.
Before I left for Cask, you were the hero. And I was always just a mirror for you, following you around like a puppy.
You might have felt that way, but I didn't.
The exact insight arrives, progress is made.
Your whole life, people have been telling you that you're dangerous, that you're a weapon, and that without an implant, you can't control this incredible gift that you have.
It's not a gift, Caleb.
And what if it is a gift? What if it is? What if every ounce of struggle you've had with yourself has been to bring you here?
That's not drama. It's emotional routing. And that happens all over this finale, all right? Genesis and Sam, worst offenders arguably. Caleb and Tarima for sure. One person becomes the delivery system for another person's progress. Again, that is more damning than just saying the payoff is rushed. Rushed payoff would suggest that the underlying dramatic structure exists and the timing's off. This is worse, okay? The show keeps replacing conflict with emotional availability. It keeps solving people instead of forcing them through situations that would actually change them. So, of course, the finale feels false, faux, fake, whatever. If every emotional beat is shaped like payoff, then real payoff becomes impossible. Nothing is allowed to remain unresolved long or even just to gather pressure. And that's a problem. Then there's the doctor fake out, all right? And I think this is one of the clearest examples in the whole episode because it really exposes the same instinct in spectacle form. The ship appears to explode. Oh my gosh, oh no. The scene wants the breath-catching beat of loss. But that little flash where you think, wait, are they really doing this? It wants the contour of sacrifice. And then immediately it backs away from the sacrifice because, I don't know, of course, it was a trick. Duh. Now, yes, the mechanics are hand-wavy, sure, fine. But honestly, that's not even my main issue. My main issue is what the scene, I think, is trying to have without paying for it. It wants the emotional effect of cost without accepting cost. All right? It's just simulated consequence, and that's not a side point. That is central. Because once you notice it, you realize the whole season has been doing versions of this. It wants the shape of sacrifice, the shape of healing, the shape, look, visage of ideological reckoning, the shape of uprising, but it keeps pulling back from the dramatic burden that those things are going to require. So what you get are scenes that briefly wear consequence like a costume. It's the cosplay of consequence, if you will. They put it on, they pose in it, then they move on. The vandalized atrium is another one, and I think this one is especially revealing because the image is good. It really is. You see it and you instantly understand what the show wants you to feel. The Academy has been violated. Bracca's movement has spread. Things are breaking down. Okay, great. Sure. But where is the dramatized tension that gets us there? Because what the show needed in that moment was proof of escalation. It needed to show that Bracca's ideology had infected the space. So instead of building the escalation, it jumps to the production design that implies the escalation already happened. Past tense, off screen. All right. This is a very specific kind of failure. The image is being used as narrative compression. The set dressing is being asked to imply a chain of cause and effect that the season did not take the time to dramatize. And sometimes you can get away with that. Sometimes. Here, you can't, because the surrounding structure is too thin. So the result is you look at the atrium, and instead of feeling revulsion, you feel authorship. You feel like the writers needing the room to mean something that it has not yet earned the right to mean, so they write it that way. And then there's the trial itself, okay? And I think this is where my patience with the show basically runs out. Because on paper, this is the right instinct. Absolutely the right instinct. If you're doing a Star Trek finale, you want to end not just on action, but I think on some sort of a moral consequence. You know, public accountability, institutional pressure, competing truths. Okay, yes, that is definitely Trek territory. That's where the franchise can really be excellent. But the reason a guest Star Trek trial works is not because someone put characters in a room and started asking big questions. It works because by the time the trial begins, the argument is already alive. That's the part this episode just does not have. All right, so the trial is not supposed to create the moral collision. It's supposed to be the point where the moral collision that is already being waged around everyone becomes formalized, all right? That's a huge difference. Here, the scene has to do everything. It has to interrogate the Federation. It has to legitimize Bracca enough to make the conflict complicated. It has to fold Caleb and his mother back into the moral framework. And then it has to ask whether institutional harm created the extremism now threatening the institution. That is an absurd amount of labor for one scene to do. And you can feel it. All right, you can feel the blocking trying to create charge. You can feel the speeches trying to create inevitability. You can really feel the close-ups trying to create weight or give gravity to the moments. You can feel performance intensify trying to make this seem like the climax of an argument. But it isn't the climax of an argument. It's the first time the show's really trying to have that argument in full. And that's naked. That's failure. The trial is being forced to carry moral labor that should have been distributed across the season. I don't know. So instead of culminating ideological pressure, it's delivering ideological pressure all at once and hoping the format of a Trek trial will make that feel like culmination. Well, it doesn't. It feels assigned. All right. Worse, it feels like the show thinks the courtroom shape is the meaning, and it isn't. And that's where sort of the real test comes in for me. Would any of this work if it weren't Star Trek? Not the ships, not the names, not the iconography. I mean, the scenes. Would the reconciliations land? Would the trial feel weighty? I think would the finale feel like it had actually earned grandeur? From me? No. I think that matters because it means the show is leaning on the audience's pre-existing emotional literacy to really complete underwritten scenes. They're asking us to do their job. And that's harsher than just saying it uses nostalgia, because it's relying on you to recognize Trek-shaped meaning and help the scene finish building itself. That's why so much of this feels like performance. The show knows the form well enough to trigger recognition. It just doesn't generate enough pressure internally to make the form self-sustaining. I think that's why I feel like this finale is so revealing. You know, finales are merciless when you really think about it. The season can look functional for a while because it hasn't really been asked to convert setup into payment at scale yet. A finale has to do that. A finale has to cash, and Rubicon can't. Not because it doesn't know what a payoff scene looks like, because the season underneath it stored enough dramatic value for those scenes to draw from. So once the episode starts trying to pay out everything at once, the structure gives way. That's why this doesn't feel like one bad episode. It feels like a house of cards that finally is being asked to bear weight. And it can't. So there you go. Now you know. And if knowing's half the battle, you're halfway to being a know-it-all yourself. What's the know-it-all index for Starfleet Academy, the season 1 finale? Well, I'll give you the Culmination prize. Because this finale doesn't just fail on its own, it exposes a season that kept jumping to consequences without doing the work required to earn it. For me, that's going to be a 4 out of 10. Look, that's my take, all right? Did the finale work for you? Please. Or did it really have the same effect on you that it had on me, where the more it sort of pushed for weight, the more the missing machinery started showing through? Let me know. I would absolutely love to have that conversation with you. Let's do it respectfully, though. I feel like if you're going to just jump in there and be like, yeah, it sucked and blah, blah, because look, I've said a lot of very, very, very inflammatory things I do believe, but at the same time, if you like the show, God bless you. I'm all for it. I want to hear that. Tell me what about it. And don't just say, oh, I love this character. Tell me what they did for you. Because you have to understand, by the way, it's perfectly acceptable to say, I don't know why I liked it. I just liked it. That's fair. That's somebody who you have fun in the media, and God love you. Seriously, without audiences like that, I would never have enjoyed the original Fantastic Four movies. So trust me, I get it. But no matter what, guys, I'm happy we can have these conversations. I really do. I appreciate every single one of you. And we'll talk again real soon. Never forget, everyone loves a know-it-all. Bye, guys.